analysis. It can be useful for historical stuff, which is what we'll be focusing on today, and it can also be useful for everyday life stuff, which I'm hoping you will see how that is as we go. To start with, something that will probably be mostly familiar to you. Primary sources and secondary sources. We know that primary sources are from the time, and we know that secondary sources are about the time. We know that both of them provide evidence about history. Both of them are useful, they're just different. Let's imagine the year is 3021, and you have found a whole bunch of artifacts from a place called Adelaide. We actually can tell a lot about this time, place, culture just by looking at the stuff that we found from it. And that's essentially what we're doing with source analysis, is we're looking at what can this source tell me about the time. So we know that a Rubik's Cube is a puzzle. And so that shows that the people from the time actually had enough time to do a fun puzzle. We know how they tell the time. We know how they power things. We know that they have things that they want to keep locked up if they've got keys. And so we can see a lot about the society, the people, what they value, just by looking at a source from that time. An example of this: Dear Diary, today was a good day. I had a smoothie for breakfast, then went to school. All my students are beautiful. I am going to Faster Pasta tonight with my husband. Yay! From this, we can see what the concept of a diary is. We can see the importance of food to this person, because they've mentioned food a couple times. We can see they have students. There's a place that people go to actually be students and learn. There's a Bible verse at the bottom, which might suggest something about this person's religion. We know that they have a husband, so they're married and marriage is a thing. We know that they actually have used a resource of a pen and paper, which was obviously available to them pretty readily if they're happy to just scribble down their thoughts. And we might have some questions for this person that we might not know from our own time. Now, there are a lot of strategies we can use when we do source analysis. This might include a series of questions to ask about each source. But essentially, we're doing source analysis to try and get as much information from the source as possible. And we also want to check, can we trust that information? So here are some strategies. Pause the video and have a look at some of these. Was the diary entry useful? Totally. Very, very useful. Was it 100% factual though? Well, we actually don't know. If we're 1,000 years in the future, we have no way of knowing whether this was exactly scientifically factual. And this is where source analysis comes in. It's the ability to show understanding of the elements that make up a source. So we show what its positives and negatives are. Now, there are three main points I would like to make here. Reliability, and we'll unpack each of these, validity, and bias. Reliability is talking about kind of how legitimate is it? Can we actually trust it? This is a good example of reliability because in order to get something published in the International Journal of Psychology, this is something that university students use, it has to be good, and it goes through a process of checkpoints. So we know that this is actually a really good, reliable source. However, this is not a good example of reliability. This is Top 10 Myths About the Brain from howstuffworks.com. And when we figure out who this author is, we can see that they actually they're specialists in English, not in the brain at all. So we know that this has a very low reliability. Validity, this is whether something is on topic or not. Does it actually answer your question? Is it relevant to what you're researching? For example, if you're researching the weapons used in World War I and you find this, yes, it's a primary source. Yes, it's a factual representation of what happened, but it's probably, unless that dog is a nasty weapon secretly, it's not going to help us with our question. Bias is the last thing, or point of view. So have a think about, is there an unfair preference or dislike of a particular group? Is there someone's opinion in this? So think about the way that you might influence something and how you might describe, for example, school. If you don't really like school or if you love school, you're going to describe it very differently, and that shows bias. So I hope this was helpful. Those are some key components that we're looking at when we're looking at source analysis, but essentially we want to know, what does this source tell us and can we trust it? All right, thank you very much. Bye.